that is set to
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I see all members are present tonight, and with that, we'll go to approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
By Lee. Any seconds? And second by Stacy. Next on the agenda is the election of officers. The nominations for the two officers up tonight for vice chair, clerk, and treasurer may be made by any member, do not require a second from any member. The vote for each position must be public, not taken by secret ballot. The newly elected officers will begin their duties immediately. Do I have a motion for the vice chair and clerk?
I motion that Lee Shimmick be the vice chair clerk.
Do I have any other nominations? Seeing none, all those in favor of Lee Shimmick say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That passes 7-0. Next will be for the treasurer. Do I have any nominations for treasurer?
To nominate Stacy Ruel.
What's that?
To nominate Stacy Ruel.
Okay. Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Okay.
Been to the workshop training for executive officers last year.
Okay, so I have a nomination for Stacy, then I have a nomination for Melissa. Any other nominations? Okay. All those in favor of Stacy, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Pass 6-0. Do I have to go? Say that. Should I go forward with? We're getting a legal ruling here. Okay, all those in favor of Melissa say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. That does not pass. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. These are considered routine in nature and be enacted by one motion. There's no separate discussion unless a board member requests so, and then it's removed from the consent agenda. On tonight's agenda is a check wire transfer, the bank reconciliation statement, the approval of the school board minutes, resignations, terminations, non-renewals. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the consent agenda? It's motioned by Ben. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Todd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is the resolution for the acceptance of gifts. Give me just a second here. I wanted to read the gifts off here. And tonight in the resolution for the acceptance of gifts, we have a gift to the Fab Lab from the Pamela Bakken Foundation, a gift from the School Toolbox for students of Hidden Oaks Middle School. We have donations from the Wells Fargo Matching Grants Program, and we have an anonymous donation to La Ola del Lago to student negative lunch account balances. Seeing this as a resolution, Seeing as a resolution, we have a roll call vote. Ben?
Aye.
Melissa?
Oh,
I still have to have do I have a motion for the acceptance of the resolution?
So made.
By Stacy, second?
Second.
Second by Lee. This requires a roll call vote. Ben? Aye. Melissa?
Aye.
Stacy?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Aye. Mary?
Aye.
And Todd?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda is the recognition of School Board Recognition Week, and to that I will hand off to Dr. Stallo. Oh, excuse me, I'm incorrect.
I've
It's
got
Laker
it.
Pride.
I've got it.
I'm
It's
still-
part
I'm
as
still
part of
learning.
Laker Pride. We will be recognizing the school board shortly. But first of all, I love that we have a full crowd because there is nothing better in my job than to talk about the amazing things that teachers and kids do every day. Our promise to our community, our purpose, our mission is to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community. And tonight, we have one of the most innovative programs and some huge risk takers in terms of our students and staff who have launched year one of our MinCaps program. So I've asked them to do a bit of a presentation, so I think our coordinator, Melanie Smija, is going to come up, and some students are going to assist her with a presentation, followed by recognition of the staff and students who are here this evening. So thank you very much for being here.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Salo, Mr. Chair, and members of the board. We are very excited to be here this evening. And you don't need to hear from me anymore because this program is really about our kids. So I get to pass the mic off to our students this evening. We have a few of them up here who wanted to share some pieces of things that they've done throughout the semester. And then afterwards, we'll be bringing up other students that are here in the audience, as well as our staff and some of our teachers that are here for this recognition. So we're excited to be here this evening and give you a brief update and insight into what we've been doing the last few months.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jaden Sheffield, and I'm here on behalf of MinCaps, as you all know. I see a lot of familiar faces. Grew up with a lot of you guys. Anyways, a few weeks ago, we had the opportunity to showcase some of our client projects to a bunch of different parents and mentors and teachers, and actually some of the people from the board were there as well. Anyways, we took them kind of through the process and what we learned and the data that we collected, and then kind of put it all in a big presentation and our final report for the first semester of MinCaps, actually.
My name's Lexi Hennon, and I'm in the medical pathway of MinCaps, and I really enjoy it because it's a lot of hands-on, like medical things that you wouldn't get to do in any health classes at school. Like last semester, we learned how to suture, which is stitching on bananas, and then we got to go to the hospital, and they showed us a lot of like cool stuff like the x-rays up there, and we got to learn kind of like what it's like in the hospital and how they use like soft skills in their jobs, and that's kind of what we're learning in one of our other classes.
Hi, I'm Carter Collins. I'm a senior here at Prior Lake. I play lacrosse and hockey, so balancing my schedule through MinCaps is a little tough, but having this, it helps me out and keeps staying organized. Here is a couple pictures of us working with our businesses with our final projects. We had to come up with a certain thing. I worked with Nubian Asset Management. They're an investment company based out of Chicago. And we went up and presented a little funny story. So our second presentation, we went up to Minneapolis, and we had our computer, our laptop, just that, and we went up there. HDMI cord didn't work. Oh no, what did you do? No flash drive, no printed out PowerPoint. So there's just one example that I learned that I'd rather learn now in high school than getting it at my first job and I ended up doing the presentation an hour later. So that's just one good experience I learned from MinCaps.
Hi, I'm Alexa Ring. I'm a junior. I'm also in the medical pathway. So up here, we have guest instructors that come in, and they come from all different like jobs. So the one we have speaking now, she came in and she was talking about communication and soft skills. And then we also have a lot of like cool instructors, and they come in and they talk about elevator speeches, which is like a little short talk about yourself. And then on the right, we have a picture. We went to Argosy University, and a couple of us got to go to Histotech, which is a really cool job that like we didn't even know about, but it's where everything from the body and off the body goes there. And then we got to hold a human brain, a cat brain, a dog's heart, and a liver.
I Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Tay and I'm a senior at Prior Lake High School. I'm involved in Student Council, National Business Honor Society, and I play Prior Lake Girls Lacrosse. In this photo, it was actually taken today because we had the lovely superintendent join us today at our, today was very unique because we got to get students that are interested for next year's pathway to come and experience our everyday school day. And we also got to share a bit of our takeaways and our experience of what has happened over the year. And a really a good thing that all of us can relate to is how at school, a normal high school, like a teacher is like pulling for teeth when just to get someone to raise their hand in class. But here, like everyone wants to say something, everybody wants to do something, and how in normal high school, we're just itching for points. Like, how many points can I get on this worksheet? I need more points. But here, you're not graded on just points. You're graded on your ability to take initiative, professionalism, and how you bring yourself about people.
Yeah, now really know where to start because we've learned so much of this program. But one thing I've learned is how to effectively communicate with others through email, phone calls, even through text. But I only really knew how to text and Snapchat. And through this, I've learned how to email and actually make a phone call that's effective. And then it's bad to say, but I did not know how to email someone effectively before I joined this program. And then the second thing is I'm a captain of the Prior Lake golf team, and MinCaps has shown me my leadership position and how to be a better leader. And we actually wrote a leadership paper on our experiences as a leader and who do we look up to and how it learned a lot. It's about.
So this is Blended Learning Day. So today, we said, we had people come in, and we got this situation. It's called a case study, and we got papers of 8 different types of people, and we had to deal with a situation where if we were stuck in a basement and a building collapsed on us, how we would help each person and in what order. And it was really cool to just see new people come in and just talk with everyone and try to come to a consensus about who to help first, and it was just really nice and cool how we all got to do that together. So
I just got to say one last thing. So at high school last year as a junior, I'd get up 7:50, rush to school, go to class, bell rings, take notes, 2 minutes to do homework, bell rings, go to class, take notes, 2 minutes to do homework. For 7 hours of the day. But here at MinCaps, we get to get up. It starts at 7:45, bright and early. Get to collaborate with new friends from north and south that I've never met before and built new relationships with them. And I still keep my old relationships with my friends from Prior Lake when I come back to the school for the second half of the day. At MinCaps, we get to collaborate with the north students, and we're not just sitting in the classroom taking notes. I don't think I've taken notes all year, actually. I've studied a little bit, but usually you're given a problem and you have to solve it on your own. So that's what I really like about it, and the fact that Ms. Smija has helped me out through this program is very unique. So thank you.
As you can see, we have a bunch of rock stars standing up here, but it's not all the rock stars that we have at our program. And so we really would like to invite up the rest of the students and our staff who really make a difference in bringing this program to life and everything that it has come to be. Okay, so I get to do all the introductions, and my last name is Smija, so I get butchered a lot when I say people try to say my last name, and so I know that I might do the same for some of these students, but I just want to kind of introduce them all to you. So we have Jaden Sheffield, And we have Lexi Hennon and Carter Collins and Nicole Tay and Jack Koenig. I knew I was going to get that one. All right, and Alexa Ring and Josue Rodas and Christina Sorensen. And then we have and Haley Thayer. And then we have some of our teachers, Brian Schleisman, Tammy Anderson, Jared Jacobs, and Scott Jenica here this evening too as well. We have several students here that could not come this evening. They're disappointed they had other activities or engagements. Some people are at Hy-Vee right now getting excited to launch that opening. But just really appreciate the opportunity to come here and let us share a little bit about MnCAPS with everyone as well. So thank you.
So there's so much about the school district that I am so proud of. And, you know, as I look at our strategic plan and we see things like innovation and personalized learning and risk-taking highlighted in our strategic plan, we have in front of us a group of people who took, I think, one of the biggest risks that they could have taken. And their parents took that same risk. This was new. We were launching something for the first time, and though there were other models that we had studied and our school board members had studied, it hadn't been done here. And being with you today was absolutely amazing, as it is every time that I'm with you. But there's something else I want to share on a bit of a personal note. Whenever I hire a teacher, I always think, is this a teacher that I would want in my son's classrooms? And today, I had my son with me at MnCAPS. And I don't know if he's going to decide to do MnCAPS or not, but hearing him talk about what he felt when he was there was pretty amazing. So I want to thank you all for what you've done for our district, for Lakeville area school districts, and for the future of Prior Lake Savage area schools, because you have started something that will continue for many, many years. So thank you very much.
Christine wants to get a picture. What's that? What's my seat? This is all. In this too.
Again, everyone. And the second thing in Laker Pride that I'd like to recognize this evening is innovation and amazing opportunities like this for students don't happen without the support of school board members. We will be launching next week, February 20th through the 24th, School Board Recognition Week. And as I stand in front of the board, the folks behind me, I have a lot of gratitude for the hours that they put into decision-making and studying around students. And I know those decisions aren't always easy, and I know there's controversy with some of them. The great thing about that is it also raises engagement of our community. So there's always those positives. But I want to thank you tonight for everything that you do. Many of you have been on this board for a long time. Some of you are embarking on this journey together for the first time. But truly, how you keep kids at the center of every decision you make is really inspiring, and I want to thank you for everything. So I'd like to recognize you and read this resolution that says, whereas Prior Lake Savage Area Schools recognizes the importance of public education in our community, and whereas Prior Lake Savage Area Schools appreciates the vital role played by those individuals who, as local school board members, establish policies to ensure an efficient, effective school system. Whereas school board members serve as a voice that enables our community to preserve local management and control of our public schools. Whereas school board members are charged with representing our local education interests to state and federal government and ensuring compliance with state and federal law. Whereas school board members selflessly devote their knowledge, time, and talents as advocates for our school children. Whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectations to the district. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that Prior Lake Savage Area Schools recognizes and salutes the members of the Prior Lake Savage Area School Board by proclaiming February 20th through 24th, 2017 as School Board Recognition Week. Thank you very much for everything that you do.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to personnel items, and Mr. Mons, Executive Director of Human Resources. Do I have a motion for acceptance of the candidates for employment?
So moved.
By Stacy. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Ben. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Wait, excuse me. 1 second. Lee has a question.
I do. Matt, on the assistant boys basketball coach, that's a new position, is that correct? Okay, I thought I read somewhere in here that it said it was a new position, but, okay. Okay, and my only reason for asking that is to make sure it was, and I assume it is, with agreeable to Title IX. Okay, and it's booster money that's doing that. Okay, all right, I just needed clarification, thank you.
Any other questions?
And I can answer that a little more. That was part of the grouping that we had. Not new to our programming, and it has been factored into for Title IX purposes, but that's why it's coming forward that way.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the candidates for employment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0.
Next, I'm presenting the following district retirement, and I'm presenting the retirement of Michael Wegman, and I would just like to say thank you very much to Mike, who's served on our staff most recently as in outside maintenance for 14 years. Big thank you, and I know that he's a big part of the culture.
Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the retirement?
So moved.
By Melissa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lee. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That passes 7-0.
And next, I present the following leaves of absence and receive their approval.
Do you have a motion for the approval of the leaves of absence?
So moved.
By Mary. Second. I'll second that motion. By Rich. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 7-0.
Finally, I'm presenting the following educational support staff staffing requests. These positions would be and what we're looking at is with the increase in there's two needs that go along with that. One is additional staffing within the food services department, 3 hours stay, and the other is another 1.0 or so
motion for the approval of the educational support staffing request?
So moved.
By Lee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Todd. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next up on the agenda is unfinished business. Approval of the 2017 Prior Lake Savage Area School District Legislative Platform.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair. In your board packet tonight is the Prior Lake Savage Area Schools Legislative Platform. The Legislative and Community Engagement Committee studied other legislative platforms and brought a recommendation forward to the full board for consideration at the January 23rd study session. Based on recommendations and discussion from that, the priorities in front of you are around adequate and equitable stable funding, increasing the basic formula, as well as increase the state share of special education funding. In the category of tax relief and equalization, we've discussed the importance of increasing state assistance to low property wealth school districts for local school operating and building bond levies by increasing the equalizing factors for the referendum equalization and debt service equalization. And finally, the third priority that was established was to enhance local control to support and encourage innovation. I think we saw an excellent example of that earlier this evening. So this evening, we are seeking approval on the legislative platform.
Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the legislative platform? By Ben. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mary. Is there any discussion? I guess I have a question. How was the process for those board members that were on the committee? How was that process, being this is a new process?
Well, our committee met, it was the first time, and the three of us, Todd Sorensen, Stacy Ruel, and myself, were on the committee and took a look at what we've done in the past. All three of us have participated in AMSD or SEE, where we're working together to, first and foremost, increase the funding. Very important. And we look back at what we've done in the past, what other districts are doing, and felt that this was representative of the things that we needed to ask our legislators when we meet with them coming up.
And I would just add that in that process, we looked at all the different platforms that each one of those organizations that we belong to, and whether it be AMSD or C, they all had different varying recommendations. Not a lot different, but there were some varying, like especially with the formula. And we kind of came, in consulting with administration, just what makes sense for our district. And so this is somewhat tailor-made for our district and what we felt we needed.
There was input from Dr. Stallo, from Julie, from Jeff that night. So.
Yeah.
Was there any discussion on the proposal for the tax credit for charter schools and parochial schools?
That hadn't come forward yet from the legislature. That we had not heard that. AMSD did not hear that until the Friday after our meeting. And so, but I don't know if a board here, if we would take a policy for or against that. That'd be up for discussion. But
any other?
Sorry, I'm not.
Any other questions or discussion?
Siri must have one.
I turned the volume down and she still wants to talk. Any other questions or discussion?
And just this is for our legislative, I would just say for our platform that we'll be meeting with our legislators at, I think it's 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, 2 weeks from today.
Yeah.
So we will present to them this document to them at that time and have further discussion.
And we also have on the 22nd is our C Day at the Capitol. I know some of us are planning on attending that.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, that passes 7-0. On to new business, strategic direction A. She needs a timeout.
as Deb's getting set up, I just want to remind the board members that I believe at our last regular meeting, I reviewed a bit about this process with our priority work and the Plan, Do, Study, Act process that different groups have been working through. So tonight our Director of Student Services will be presenting on a comprehensive E12 system of support to struggling students.
As I struggle here.
Mr. Chair, Dr. Stallo, members of the board, it's a pleasure to be here this evening and just give you a very brief overview of some of the core and priority work that we have been doing in the area of student support services. Is this okay? Thank you. Okay. All right. So we have started with, in looking at our strategic plan, the work that we are doing is tying back to the strategic direction of increasing measurable student growth and achievement. That's what our work is tying back to. So why is there a need for a comprehensive E12 system of support? Because if you look at the mission of us as a school district, it is, as Dr. Stallo shares that every meeting and every opportunity she gets, our mission is to educate all learners. And so this really is very near and dear to my heart because it's about all of our learners here at Prior Lake Savage area schools. And it also ties into our core values, which is collaborating and partnering with each other as teachers and programs. We are practicing being wise stewards of the district finances by looking at, are there things that we could do differently to align things to be better stewards of the district's funding? And also that the strive for excellence as a school district. This priority and strategic work really builds on our system-wide commitment to instructional excellence throughout the district, through all of our programs. When you look in terms of interventions, extensions, inclusion, accountability, and all those different pieces. When you think of student support services in the district, I think of it in terms of an umbrella. And what falls under that umbrella is special education, 504, ELL, gifted and talented, what else am I forgetting? Health services, all intervention. And so when you look at the needs of all of our students, many times, almost all of our students may access something in that range of umbrella depending on where they're at. So when you look at the strategic work, we are looking at some of the core and then the priority work. We're looking at that system of support for struggling learners and also looking at our MTSS RTI, Response to Intervention System for Academic. Our team members for this group, we've got a contingent from the district office, we've got representation from elementary, middle school, and high school, as well as the ALC. So what we have started with as a group is our charge has been to define what our reality is here in the district. And this has been a great opportunity coming in new to the district in July to really see what is the reality of what student support services looks like here in the district. We started with, so some of the things we've looked at the work from the DMC study, which started with a time study and focus groups. We are looking at assessment data, everything from MCA, NWEA, the Minnesota Student Survey, problem-solving team data. And then we're also having lots of targeted conversations with stakeholders, which includes teachers, administrators, and parents. And part of those targeted conversations are focusing on, we're reviewing our service models, instructional models, supplemental curriculum, and really making decisions about surrounding and how do we wrap around services. So, some of our key findings. The District Management Council, DMC, came up with a number of commendations, things that we are doing really well as a district. Those include that we have teachers and staff that are passionate about meeting the needs of all students and in a general education setting, that we hold all of our students to rigorous grade level standards. They called out the fact that we have a cultural liaison who serves as really an important part of, as a resource to families and students. That would be Wayne Wells. The fact that the district, we really take a data-driven approach to instruction and to the identification of students who are struggling. That as a district, we identify students for special education services at a rate similar to the state and national averages. Currently, our district is about 11%. State average is 15%, and nationwide it's 13%. So typically you want to see it be around 10 and 11%. So that tells us we're doing a good job as a district. And the other key finding and commendation was that the district and school leadership are really open to change and to prioritize what to do best for students. They also, the DMC also called out a number of opportunities for us as a district. One of those was expanding our time offerings for all students who struggle, including students with disabilities and those students who may be ELL students. So it's basically giving students a double scoop of something. If they're struggling in the area of reading, we want to give them a double scoop of reading. We have an opportunity to consider aligning the background knowledge and experience of our staff and aligning the teachers with the most experience to deliver the instruction and the expertise of those teachers to deliver the instruction to our struggling kids. Considering the amount of time that our related services staff spend with students while managing those group size, so DMC looked at those group sizes and how do we schedule so that we're being efficient with the staff we have and maximizing group size, and what does best practice say about that. And the last finding that they had was to consider providing more social emotional support to students by better leveraging the district's resources that we already have. So they're not looking at adding, it's looking at how do we leverage what we currently have going on. The other key findings were that the, district assessment data indicates that there is an achievement gap that exists between all of our Prior Lake students, and especially with students with disabilities, English language learners, and students living in poverty. So as part of our charge is to find out what's the gap analysis. What were those key findings when we started having those targeted conversations with teachers and administrators? What we learned was that our current practices are not aligned across the district consistently. And that includes service models, instructional models, decision-making models, and supplemental curriculum. So there's an opportunity for us as a district to figure out what do we want it to look like and to build it. So part of our action plans right now is we are continuing, as I shared with you, there's a lot of different areas under student support services. So we are gathering a lot of baseline data on what our current practices are. Through that, we're meeting with teams of teachers, administrators, and parents. We are getting baseline data on special education and related services, English language learners, gifted and talented, intervention. General ed is a huge part of that as well, and positive behavior supports and interventions. So what we do is we identify where are those gaps and inconsistencies and what opportunities exist out there to improve our current systems and practice. So we are in the process of convening an inclusive elementary and secondary team. And inclusive means that we're going to have all the players that we need at the table, including general ed teachers, special education teachers, ELL teachers, gifted and talented teachers, all stakeholders coming together to review what is the research and best practice in meeting the needs of students who struggle. We need to identify the instructional strategies that are most effective in the field. What does research say is most effective in meeting the needs of students? and then to create a common understanding of those needs and strategies with all of our staff, and really to streamline the systems of support based on research and best practice, again, while leveraging our current resources so that we ensure all students receive the most effective supports based on their individual needs. Resources that we are anticipating we will need are primarily in the area of professional development, in the area for general education and special education to partner together, in the areas of reading, MTSS, especially when you're looking at the areas of behavior and problem solving and intervention teams. Implementing interventions with fidelity is another one. And then differentiation. So when you look at all of our students, how do we meet the kids at the high end, the kids at the low end, and the kids that are in the middle as well? So when you look at a timeline, this year what we have been doing is our goal is to complete the baseline data on all of our current practices, to be able to share the intensive data analysis of student system outcomes and trends. So it's important for us to take a look at trend data also to know what we're doing well and what we have done well over time. We are beginning to do some research and review of best practices in all of those different areas. And then our next step is really taking those two, there's going to be an elementary team and a secondary team that's coming together, and to define those non-negotiables that will result in a system that's really based on the belief that all students can achieve at high levels. So again, going back to what our mission is as a district. And then next year, as we look to next year, is to complete the research and the review of best practices in all those different areas and begin making some program decisions based on our non-negotiables, and to really be able to come out and share with staff, here's what the framework to support all of our students in the district is. And then again, there's always that continuous improvement. We're always looking at refining and evaluating our programming as we move forward. Questions?
Go ahead.
As I read through the presentation before the meeting, the question kept coming up in my mind: how are we addressing the needs of the average student that has different things going on that they're not identified as gifted or ELL or anything else? Your presentation helps answer some of those questions, but I feel like it's somewhat lacking as I read through this. So I don't know if that can be reworked or emphasized. Sometimes I think the kids in the middle are the ones that get lost. So it made me ask the question, what does struggling mean? I mean, is there a definition of struggling? Because you can have an A student, but they can be struggling.
They could be struggling social and emotionally and still be getting a 4.0.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think part of it is really defining on knowing going into this that all students have different needs at different points in time. So no matter what it is that they're struggling in, even if it's not visible to us all the time, being able to figure out, how do we address that? How do we identify what that is and best support kids?
Okay. Because your presentation helps me feel better about that.
Okay.
But I missed it somehow. It didn't seem strong enough that we are addressing just the average kid that's doing fine, it appears, and doesn't get all that extra help all the time or attention. I never want to forget them. So, thank you.
I had a question. First of all, thank you very much for this. And like Lee said, it did clear up when she started to explain through it. But I was wondering if you couldn't just explain your definition of intervention in RTI.
When I think of in terms of intervention, it's looking at where is a student, what is the skill that you want the student to be demonstrating that they are not currently demonstrating. And so whether that's, I think in terms of we want them not to be blurting out in the middle of class, okay? So what interventions, what skill do we need to teach the student, or what intervention do we need to put in place to support the student to ensure that's going to make a positive impact, or our best guess of a positive impact? You're collecting data on that then, And then after like 3 weeks of data collection, that can help solidify, is what I'm doing working or not working? And you may or may not need to change that intervention based on your data that you've collected.
On the one slide where you talk about action plans, you actually distinguish between positive behavior interventions and intervention RTI. I kind of heard both of that in your description there. Is there a distinguishable factor for you?
When you look at RTI originally came out and started with reading primarily, and that's where all of us heard about it originally from. And then after a very short time later, math came on, and then you're looking at behavior as well. So when I think of in terms of RTI, I think of response to intervention in all three of those areas. PBIS, all of our schools in the district, with the exception of the high school, correct, are PBIS schools. And so along with that comes specific training and areas that we've been working on as a district that will feed into that RTI piece. When you think of like Tier 1, what are the things that we're doing in PBIS procedures that we have in place that fit into Tier 1? And you think of responsive classroom is another one, I think, that fits into that Tier 1 when you think of what all general education students get.
Can I just add something to that? One of the things, I think the term response to intervention, RTI, really was the first framework and model that we heard a lot about. Minnesota and other states are starting to use the multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS. So I know we get a lot of acronyms in education. You'll notice on our priority work on the back of our strategic plan, we've used those terms interchangeably because we want to make sure that our community and parents and teachers don't think, oh, MTSS is something new. It really is just, I think, a more global approach to both those academic supports and to the social emotional learning supports. So we kind of use MTSS and RTI interchangeably, just for all of you out there who were wondering.
And I do have one more question. In the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned you weren't providing these services equally throughout the district. Could you elaborate on that, what you meant by that?
When I'm talking about inconsistencies, I think what happens over time, and I saw it in my previous district as well, is that there are some inconsistencies in when you think in terms of, I'll use special ed as an example. When you think in terms of how do you determine how many minutes of service a student gets? And that's really an individual decision. But we want to make sure that a student who's at Jeffers Pond, their experience in the area of intervention is very similar or very consistent with a student at Greenwood. And so being able to come together and have some conversations about what things we're doing well and to be able to share those. Today, for example, we had our problem-solving teams had a really good conversation about what different buildings are doing in the areas of problem solving, and then our goal is to merge the best of what people are doing and then put those practices into place moving forward. So there's always going to be a little inconsistency in it, but we want a student's experience to be the same.
Any other? I have one. You had on your action plans, you wanted to convene an inclusive elementary and secondary team. Is that one team?
No, they're two separate ones.
For elementary and secondary?
One for elementary, one for secondary, but they're going to have to merge at some point.
Did your group think about maybe having a separate one for middle school and secondary, and middle school and high school and elementary? Because sometimes those issues.
I have a middle school background, so yeah, I mean, that is certainly something we probably will, as we're talking as a secondary group, we will probably be tweaking that out and doing some, I would envision we probably will do some breakout of middle school, high school, and I would also envision we may even do some breakout of primary elementary and intermediate elementary, just because of where kids are at developmentally, being able to respond.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. motion for the acceptance of the report?
So moved.
By Todd. And I'll second that motion. All those in favor of accepting the report, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is a synchronized swim co-op agreement. Okay, we've been asked, Mr. Reitz cannot be here tonight, so we've been asked to, I will present. The board's requested to dissolve the co-op with the Jordan School District for synchronized swimming, and then to apply for a new co-op using Lakeville North and Lakeville South High School students. And the board has been asked to approve that agreement this evening. Do I have a motion for the approval?
Question?
Sure.
What is the role of the co-op?
Jane, why don't you come on up and we're going to have why don't we have a motion first?
Motion on the table
So
for
moved.
discussion.
So moved by Todd and second by Lee. Melissa?
What is the role of the co-op? What is it?
The role of the co-op is that if they're interested, if there's an interested school or somebody in the school that they don't have a team, like synchronized swimming, Lakeville South and Lakeville North do not have teams, and they want to be a part of a team. And so we have low numbers in synchronized swimming, but we still have a team. So they asked to be a part of our team. And so, and Jordan hasn't had anyone ask about it for many years. So we want to dissolve that and then add Lakeville North and Lakeville South.
Thank you. That sounds like a good idea.
Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next up is budget assumptions and enrollment update by Executive Director of Business Services, Julie Sink.
Chair Wolf, board members, Dr. Stallo. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit at the last board work session. We had talked quite extensively through much of this information, and I just wanted to talk through it one more time. If you have additional questions, we talked about our strategic roadmap, all the things that we do in the district follow our roadmap. As you heard earlier tonight, Dr. Stallo and talking about our roadmap, we too, as we work through the budget process, we keep these core values at our center. Here's the budget calendar. We have the budget calendar. We have many work sessions and board meetings that we continue to go through this and refine the budget. At the last board work session, we went through most of the budget parameters, discussing what do we think the board, the legislature will give us for money on the basic formula, talking about enrollment and those things that, as we work through those assumptions, help us to develop that budget. And as you know, by June 5th, we're hoping to have a preliminary budget for approval for the board. By law, we have to have one by June 30th. Here's our historical enrollment, and we use this, and it's been important for us as these last couple of years that we're growing, that we use these numbers to help us develop future enrollment trends, along with Hazel Reinhardt's study that was conducted this year, trying to really look at how these have affected our district with that enrollment and that migration in. Not all of our students come in at the elementary and kindergarten level. They come in at all grade levels, as you can see across the board here. Because most of the time, and I've said this over the years, we're not necessarily a first-time homebuyer district. And so parents are moving here when their students are in some of those upper grade levels. So from Hazel's study, we have our October 1 resident enrollment projections. As you know from the previous slide, our migration into our district has been high. So we're looking at those second two columns where it says high migration. And one has a low kindergarten number and one has a high kindergarten number. So if we look at those two based on that, we would expect additional average enrollment of resident students of 250 over the next 5 years. And I've also included the 10-year projection from Hazel's study, again with that high migration into the district, because that's what our trend has shown over the years. We still are continue to grow over 10 years. The rate isn't quite as quick over the years 6 through 10. And the biggest reason for that is that those students haven't been born yet. So it's really difficult for us to project out when we don't have those numbers for those live births. This is a slide from her demographic study. At the time, we were looking at closing open enrollment in grades, or limiting it to 1% in grades 1 through 12, and leaving the kindergarten open. And so she had done some projections based on what would our open enrollment numbers look like. In the first column, it shows you kindergarten at 105 open enrolled students. And if we, her projection is, if we had kindergarten at 105 open enrolled students, we had 1,008 open enrolled students across the district today. And in 10 years, we'd have 1,009. So it would keep the district steady with the number of open enrolled students we had in the district. If we were to reduce it to 90, you can see that we would lose a couple hundred kids. And at 80, that number continues to go down. So at 65, which is the lowest that she had projected, in 10 years, we would have 692 open enrolled students in the district. Because typically we lose open enrolled students in grades 1 through 12. Not at all levels, but across the board. So some of the assumptions that we are making to determine what our enrollment will be for the future. We're using that moderate to high resident district growth and migration, which we had talked about. Open enrollment is closed to 1% at all grade levels for 2017 and 18. And then it's open for subsequent years. And this was a lot of discussion that the board had. But for future projections, we needed to have some consistency. So those were the assumptions that we made. And by utilizing those assumptions, this is what our enrollment projections would look like. Next year, we anticipate, the first column is the current year, 8,275. Next year, we would project 8,479, and that's 204 additional students. It's a little less than the 250, as you can see. That was projected by Hazel because we've closed open enrollment. And we fully expect that we will continue to lose some students at other grade levels to open enrollment if their siblings cannot get into the district. And then we see some return of those numbers in the following years, 19, 20, 21, because the district is open once again. We talked quite a bit about the impact of open enrollment on our district finances. And this is a pretty, it's a good slide to see. One of the things that we have talked a lot about is by our basic revenue that we receive, the a little over $6,000 per pupil. When we get 1% on that, it's not enough to sustain our expenditures. So our district has been living, I want to say living, on and being able to be financially stable because of additional enrollment into our district. So when we look at the blue line, or the blue columns on this graph, we're looking at if we would have kept open enrollment open even for 17, 18. The gold line assumptions that we close open enrollment for 5 years, and the green is that we close it for 1 year, and then it's open again for the subsequent years. And you can see that there's quite a bit of difference in the funding due to the loss of that open enrolled students. Yes, we continue to gain resident students, but like I said, all those students are important for us to continue to receive that additional revenue we need to sustain those programs and services that we have. Most districts that you see surrounding us, if they're not growing districts, they're going to their taxpayers asking for more money, or they're cutting programs and services in their districts. And so that's the way that we have been able to continue to sustain those programs and add some programs and services because of the growth in our district. Yes, go. Yes, please.
On that last slide there, I just want to say again for everything. Sounds good. When you're looking at the blue line there, and we're saying if there wasn't a change to open enrollment, it's not to say that there hasn't been any open enrollment closures. We haven't had open enrollment to buildings that are at capacity previously, and that blue line represents a continuation of that practice. For instance, closing at the high school, 910, which has been the historic trend there, and then also closing at elementary sites or in any individual program that's at capacity.
Now, preliminarily, this is, we looked at 2% on the base formula, so that's $121 per pupil unit for fiscal year 18. That's $1.1 million. Additional revenue due to student growth, somewhere between $1.2 and $1.8 million that we would receive in additional revenue. Compensatory funding, that's based on the number of free and reduced lunch students that we have. That would be really unchanged. I don't see a big change in those numbers. And our operating referendum revenue is at $674 per pupil unit for FY 18 and 19. As you know, as a board, that is a 10-year operating referendum, and that is up for renewal in FY 18. So one of the things that the board and we had discussed at our last work session was the effect of this $674 per pupil unit. If we want to continue some of those programs and services that we're offering, and we're limiting those open enrollment opportunities in our district, then we need to come up with that money somewhere. And so if we want to continue that, and we're not seeing that growth in our district at those levels, then we need to find somewhere that we would want to look for that. Or the other option, of course, as we talked about as well, is where do we limit those opportunities for our students? And so that's something that we have to discuss over the next couple of months as we move forward in the renewal of that operating referendum. And then we're discussing as well any changes in fees, parking, and activities. We'll be bringing in more information about that in the future. Some of our expenditure assumptions is our current staff, wages, and benefits. Additional teaching staff to accommodate for enrollment. We're anticipating 204 additional students, so we'll need some additional teaching staff. Our average teaching staff is $62,500. For special education, it's about $20,000 more because it's much more difficult for us to find special ed staffing. We also, as you know, even seeing tonight that with the additional students that we have, there are additional custodial and para needs, clerical needs that across the district, as well as administrative needs in the future. With that additional staff, may be some need for transportation, so additional buses. We also have a contract that calls for a 1% increase in that contract, about $50,000. And then our actual salary and benefits for current agreements. And for those that are not settled for next year, we take a 4-year average increase calculation based on the number of staff we have. And overall, those increases are $2.25 million. 2% increase in supplies and materials. And then this potential TRA, Teachers Retirement Association, employer contribution increase of 1%. We have about $53 million of wages that are considered licensed staff. So if you took 1% of $53 million, that's about $530,000. 1% on the formula is about $600,000. So that's about 1%. If that, we're asking for 2% on the basic formula. And if this does pass in the legislature this year, which it does sound like this will happen, it'll take up at least almost 1% of that 2% allocation. I did want to, this goes a little bit back to comparing our district to some other districts in the surrounding us that we do look at. There are 331 school districts in Minnesota, and for general education revenue, which includes the basic formula, some other categorical funding like Gifted and Talented, our referendum, local optional revenue, Q-Comp, equity, compensation, we are number 260 out of 331 districts for our revenue that we receive. And it's kind of just to reiterate, that's why we need those students, is because we do have a low revenue per student that we receive. So we need those students to continue to be financially stable. Also, this doesn't include the tech levy, and so many of these districts also receive technology funding that we do not. If we look a little bit at this slide, it does go through and show, this is based on last year's October 1 numbers, but it's the revenue, the $6,067 per student, the additional operating revenue that each of these districts receive, and then the tech levy that each of those districts receive. And you can see that's why we're one of the lowest in terms of additional operating referendum per student, and we do not have a technology levy. So that's why that really does put us at that low end of revenue coming in across the state. Our current enrollment for this year, I did want to update you that on this a little bit. October 1 of 2016, our enrollment was 8,316 students. We're budgeting for 8,275 because we do typically see some attrition, especially at our upper level across the year. And right now we're at 8,290. And I feel very comfortable with our budgeted enrollment number of 8,275. And we want to talk a little bit about our kindergarten enrollment for next year, for 2017 and 18. I did update this prior to the board meeting today with the latest numbers that we have, and we're at 400 students right now, resident students enrolled into the district for kindergarten. We do have 7 additional open enrolled students that were accepted into the district. Last year at this, as of February 4th of 2016, we had 451 students, and that did include open enrolled students at that time. And as you know, we have 105 open enrolled students in the district in kindergarten this year. So we have 615 kindergarten students this year. Last year at kindergarten registration, we had 415 students. So we gained 200 students over the course of from registration last year until the start of school. If that helps any of you at all to know what we're kind of looking at in terms of additional students coming in. So we're at 343, and if I took that same 200, which I know is probably a little high, we'd be at 543, so it's close to what I'm budgeting. Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, just when you were saying the 200 over the period of time, does that include open enrolled during
Yes,
that
it
period of
does.
time? So it was people moving in and open enrolled combination, okay.
As I said, my 200 number, if I was to take that same number, would probably be a little high because some of those are open enrolled.
Okay.
But we did also see some open enrollment students move into the district, which then pulls them out of the open enrollment category.
Yes, it does.
Oh, right, after the start of the year.
After the start of the year. We have also received some phone calls about parents pulling their older children out of the district when their younger child did not get in under the open enrollment in kindergarten. This is the open enrollment list that we had. 30 students applied at Loyola Del Lago, 113 in kindergarten. So the total we have there, and those with a sibling, there were 9 at Loyola Del Lago and 53 others across the district. So a little over 60 students with siblings in the district applying for open enrollment. Now it seems like a high number, and I've talked to some of you about this. We had about 35 kindergarten students apply for open enrollment last year that did not come to the district. So this number isn't out of the ordinary as far as the number of students that have applied for open enrollment at kindergarten. A lot of them apply at different places, several different schools, and just trying to find the best fit for their families. So they don't always come here, even though they've applied for open enrollment. And then you can see our other two grade levels that we see a higher number of open enrolled is at 6th grade and 9th grade. Otherwise, it's 1 or 2.
But we accepted 7 students max per grade level.
We have
as of
only
last week.
right now accepted the 7 at kindergarten. All of the grade levels we have not had the lottery at this time. Any questions?
I don't know, what's the capacity of La Ola del Lago again?
We started that program with 80 at the kindergarten level, knowing that we'd have some attrition through the years. It's much more difficult at that level, at La Ola del Lago, to have someone come in at an upper grade, like they would start at 2nd grade, if they haven't had Spanish previously. So many times if they move out of the district, we don't have someone to replace them at 2nd grade.
I'd just like to clarify that you said we're at 68 right now, and the capacity for kindergarten, regardless of all the other factors, is 80.
That's what when we started the program, we thought 80 was a good number because of the capacity that we had at Edgewood.
How many sections is that?
It's 4.
4 sections. Okay.
So we had actually 69 at that number with the one open enrollment who chose to go to La Ola del Lago. Did I read?
We've had one that's requested, but we have not placed any students right now at any elementary school at the kindergarten.
One had preferenced it.
One had preferenced it.
Okay.
Correct.
And just how crowded, if I may ask, is Red Tail Ridge right now?
That's by far it is where the growth is, and is by far our school that is the most crowded. So we definitely would probably not place an open enrolled student at that school.
But we have the opportunity to decide where those kids would be placed.
And we've always done that. That is
space.
correct. And we've always done that. So when we have students that have applied, if we are full in a grade level, or we are very comfortable with the class sizes that we have at a particular school, then when they've applied, then we would place them at somewhere where we have space for those students. It wouldn't necessarily be their first choice, but many times they're willing to come into the district at any school.
Can you go back to the open enrollment chart again for me?
This one?
No,
Or the
previous
kindergarten one?
Yes. So walk through that. Last year at this time we had roughly 451.
Correct.
And this year we have 400.
Right, and I know by March 1, we had 474 students last year as of March 1st.
Did that include open enrollment?
Yes.
That included open enrollment. That's the disparity, Rich.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay. And we ended up with, of that 451, we ended up with 600
615.
615.
And if I remember correctly, that again goes back to the 105 total accepted applications across to all the kindergartens.
Correct.
Okay. Can I ask you just a question? Just in the progression here of this time. So these are all, I mean, obviously resident enrollments, right?
These are only resident students.
So are they just coming in gradually? I mean, I guess, how does it normally work that we're just get applications and because we've already had the roundup or whatever.
Right. When I went back and looked at our last year's, like I said, we started last year at 415, and that includes open enrollment, so because we didn't separate them out last year, we ended up with 615. So we grew 200 students since kindergarten registration up until the start of school. So it's very typical for us to keep receiving enrollment packets from our resident students, our resident parents for their kindergarten students.
So I'm just wondering about notification. I mean, it's a normal pattern, and somehow I want you to take out open enrollment, that we continue to have, I mean, most people hear about, you know, they're already residents and they hear about that it's roundup time at kindergarten. We get the big, I would say a big mass of them, but then it's just the gradual, I should do this kind of thing. Okay. I'm just trying to gauge as to how much this is going to go on, you know, with our own residents.
Well, it sounds like we wouldn't get to 600 with our own residents based on last year's numbers.
That would also be my best estimate, to say at the max, I would think we would receive about 200 more. I mean, from 343 to the start of school would be about 200 more at the maximum, and that's 543, and we're budgeting for 535. So even if we didn't get quite 200, we'd probably be somewhere close to our budgeted amount.
Are you thinking 200 resident students, though? I mean, last year, those included open enrollment students, correct?
That's correct. But about 80 of those 415 last year were open enrolled.
Okay.
So we're running about almost 100 over or more on par percentage-wise. 100 more students. If you said 80 or more at that point in time.
So we received about 20 more, 25 more open enrolled registrations since the registration in last year.
Yeah.
Applications come in quicker at the beginning part of the year.
Correct.
Do you see that for La Ola del Lago also, that pattern?
No, we don't see that same pattern for La Ola del Lago, because they have a real interest in La Ola del Lago. They come to the district because of La Ola del Lago, and so they're very much on top of their registrations.
Is it fair to say that we have space for kindergartners outside of what we expect coming from the district?
We have some space at some schools, not space at every school, but we do have some space at some schools.
Do you have, between kindergarten and first grade, the number of new open enrolled or new community members, either one, the count, so we can kind of gauge a percentage growth? Because we don't want to overfill kindergarten, I would assume, because then you're going to be way over capacitated at first grade then.
I don't, and I did not get that question early enough for me to investigate it for today's meeting.
But we do have some numbers that say what grades, what are in each grade on that one chart. Yeah.
So 46 students. Of those, though, I'm not sure how many were open enrolled or how many were resident. I couldn't tell you that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to remind, because I know you weren't here, when we made the decision to close open enrollment, the numbers that we were seeing were that at the elementary level, we were within 10 of being completely full at K through 6. So that's why we had to make that, or K through 5. That's how we had to make that decision, because we were within 10, and that was considered full. So that's what we had based it on.
And I appreciate the decision that you had to make in November, and it helped address space needs. But from what I see on these charts, we're not addressing the financial need that we're going to have going forward. And that is concerning to me. I'm not sure where we'll get that money. And as Julie has said a number of times, a lot of our money is coming from growth to keep us going, to keep our programs going. So I do have a concern that we maybe have cut off open enrollment in kindergarten a little too quickly. I think we have better information now. I support the decision of the board, but I think that decision also came with a caveat that we would keep discussing it, keep looking at it. And we have more information now than we had before, specifically the financial information, but also we know we have a better idea of what our kindergarten enrollment is, And if there truly is space in the district for kindergartners, I think it's wise on our part to use our buildings as efficiently as we can. If we have space to use and we're not using it, that's somewhat negligent, I think, on our part. If we're full, we're full. I get that. And I'm not proposing that we open enrollment at any other level. And I don't think it should be open completely. I think we need to cap it to something that we're comfortable with. So I don't know if I'm in the process of making a motion or not, or if we're ready to do that, but I feel that we have better information. We need to look at this maybe a little differently than it was in November.
I would like to add that per a conversation I think we had at the study session as well as in other environments, I'd like to see a capacity number with a percentage standard deviation there to allow for community growth, because if we look prematurely also at the numbers for kindergarten and then we do have a surge in community in district growth, we're going to end up with even a worse overcrowding situation. So I'd like to actually look at that from that perspective, and also I believe that the concept of potentially moving the boundaries around a little bit to make sure that, I mean, what's going on at Red Tail Ridge does concern me, and I can't imagine from the numbers we saw coming into this year that there's other issues with overcrowding at the various elementary schools, and I don't, in the interest of education, you can't have those classes too full. These kids are gonna lose.
What's up? Back at our meeting in December again, we were entertaining trailers. We had Red Tail Ridge parents begging for more space. We had art on a cart. We have teachers that were saying that we did not have equity within buildings. If we have any room that is not being used at a building for kindergarten, I'm sure that we can use it for first grade or for some other thing within that building. I think the community, the teachers, everything we were hearing was that there was no space left. And we decided as a board to make this decision for next year for our planning needs, but to reevaluate. But I would say this is not the time to open that up. Things cannot have changed that much in 2 months.
I think my recommendation is that the board has to look at both all the enrollment and the financial impact of that in terms of both space and then in terms of the dollars that it brings in, because we obviously know, and that's the discussion about the $674 operating referendum. If we don't have the students, and that's the decision the board has made, then we need to come up with those dollars somewhere in order to continue some of those programs that we have.
If I could ask a question. So walk us through a little bit when you say that we have to open enroll so that we are financially stable, and that means either limiting the opportunity for students, like cutting programs and things. I know that there are some other things that we can do. I mean,
well, as we look at this general fund revenue assumptions, we can see that the 2% in the base formula is $101.1 million, and the additional revenue due to student growth is somewhere around 1.2 to 1.8. Those two don't cover our actual salary and benefits for our current contracts. So it's a tight budget, and so if we say it's 1.1 million and for the 2%, if we get 2%, because many of our, as we know, the legislators are saying 1% or 1.5%. So if we were to get 2%, that's 1.1 million. And then if we were to have the smallest enrollment at $1.2 million, we're looking at 2.3 million, which covers that, but not the additional staffing that we need for the additional enrollment, because we have those expenditures already in our district. That's where I'm coming from. My responsibility to tell you about the expenditures and the revenues in the district, and so you need to understand those pieces as well.
And I would agree, our space needs maybe haven't changed in 2 months, but I think we know better now what our financial needs are going to be going forward. And that's where a lot of my concern is. I'm not sure where we'll get that from. And then you mentioned the TRA contribution, that if that does go through, if we get 1.5% or 2%, almost 1% of it is gone before we even start.
It just seems to be like we're in a bit of a pickle here. I mean, it sounds like, how could we be so dependent on open, are other schools also so dependent on open enrollment? But then the taxpayers, we don't get everything that covers that. And the taxpayers are concerned, and they're not understanding, because then we have to build more, we have to expand more. We're in a never-ending.
I think that's where most districts find themselves, and it's unfortunate because the state doesn't, the 1% or the 2% of the formula doesn't sustain our programming. I mean, it's just a fact, it's a reality, and that's why we have so many districts have operating referendums 2 or 3 times as large as Prior Lake Savage's operating referendum, because they don't have growth in their districts, or they want additional programming over and above what that their current operating referendum is providing. So many times they're asking their community for those additional dollars needed to keep programming. I think if you read in the newspaper today, our neighboring districts are doing the same. They are asking for additional dollars because they're not growing and they need those dollars. And many times they're doing both. They're cutting and asking for additional dollars.
Julie, I appreciate that, and I think this slide speaks to your response, that the revenue has to come from somewhere. And right now, if you look at our operating revenue right now, our operating levy is one of the lowest in the area. You can see on this slide that Shakopee is the only one with a lower operating referendum, so that's per student amounts. Yet they also, Shakopee, which is lower than us, has a $2.5 million per year technology levy. So the referendum or the revenue of these other districts is far greater per student than what our community is providing right now through an operating levy.
And I know we have space needs, but it is what has been helping our district remain financially solvent without having to go back to our taxpayers in 10 years for additional revenue.
If you look at the previous slide from that one too, our general education revenue, we're the lowest, we're 260, we're on the low end there too.
Without the technology levy.
And
those amounts are without the technology levy.
Operating levy.
And yet we have parents, we have community members voicing displeasure to us that we're wasting taxpayer dollars. That slide shows we're not. We're educating our students at a better level than most of those schools. We're educating them for fewer dollars than all those schools. And yet there's some group out here that claims we're wasting dollars. And I fail to see where that is.
Julie, last time we talked about the financials, and I did ask about, obviously, even with the student population remaining even, there's obviously been inflationary pressures where the cost of everything has gone up. What is our break-even point with regards to per student revenue and then the operating costs of the district? Do we know that?
I would not know that off the top of my head. It really depends on the assumptions that we make, for enrollment and the assumptions that we're making in terms of additional revenue that we'll receive from the state. Those two things play a big role in what that break-even point is, because with enrollment comes additional staffing and additional needs that way. We've talked about increasing class sizes or some of those things also, which has not been on, as part of our mission statement, it is to keep our class sizes low, and so we've been attempting to do that every year, is to continue to lower those class sizes. But that comes as well at a cost.
Well, all things remaining equal. And again, all things remaining equal, how many students do we need in the schools in order to pay for it today?
Well, today's again, I haven't had time to research that question, and so I would have to come back to you to give you a true, correct answer and do a little research on what that number really is.
A lot of that, though, is dependent upon what the legislature does.
It does.
That's why I said all things remaining equal today. That's
Yeah.
because we can't just keep adding students to make up for it. There's got to be, a better plan. And that's what I'm concerned about. I understand the concern with the overcrowding, and I understand the concern with the lack of funding. I just want to know where that stabilization point is, so we understand the variable versus the fixed costs and can kind of start to predict a little bit better.
That's definitely something that we can work through as we work through this budget process and looking at all of those opportunities for us to see what other additional revenue we can gain, or where we want to minimize some of those costs in the district.
Looking at the numbers, I think we have space at kindergarten. It's just, what is the magic number that we set aside for open enrollment? Because we've got the facilities already there, right, for 600 something, and what's the magic number that we set aside for open enrollment? Go ahead.
What's the magic date too? If we're expecting another 100, 150, 200, how do you cap that to the right number without going over what we budgeted for, over what we feel from a space standpoint, and not allowing our residents to be able to be within that house?
I certainly see some, from the numbers here, some space available at La Ola del Lago. It's just the other kindergarten.
How that, just so that the board understands, you couldn't say we're going to allow 12 and make the next 12 people on the list, because we do have a waiting list. They did not have all requested La Ola del Lago,
right,
but that's where they would have to go to school.
That's not unusual, though, with districts that have schools that are full up for their community levels, to say, this is the only place we have space, so you take it or you leave it. That's not against the law either. So
no,
yeah.
Definitely not. You can open certain buildings. We've done in the past. We've closed our high school, as Matt had said, and certain schools to open enrollment, so that we would place them where we would need them, to make class sizes more manageable at certain grade levels. That's how we've utilized our open enrollment, is to help manage those class sizes, so that we can have that little bit lower number, especially since we have neighborhood elementary schools. So when, you could have 30 kids in kindergarten at one school, and so is it 2 teachers with 15 students, or is it 1 at 30? Those are the things that we utilize open enrollment for, to say, no, if we have 10 more open enrolled students, now we have 2 classes of 20. And that's how we manage that across the district.
I would like to ask that we do maybe work on a capacity plan with some area for growth for in community, and find out what that capacity would be per elementary school at the kindergarten level, before I would be willing to make a decision. Just because, again, if we all of a sudden experience a surge, has been predicted, in community growth, we are, there's a diminishing return to overcrowding these schools.
I agree. It is a difficult decision for the board, with space and then the dollars. So it's very understandable how difficult this decision is.
So, Mary, if I understand you, is that a capacity analysis just at the K level? Or
currently, I'd like it through 3rd grade, actually, just because of the career path, and if depending on what happens in November, et cetera, so we can plan ahead.
That's
That makes
the
sense.
other
I don't
board?
quite understand what you said. Just 3rd grade?
Kindergarten through 3rd grade.
Kindergarten through
I'd like to see
okay.
a capacity plan with a certain percentage free for the expected community growth, just to see where those numbers would be. And I would assume that the educators in particular would have an ideal classroom size that's easy for them to manage. That's ideal. That's not to say that's realistic for, every day, but just to have something to measure against.
And capacity is also flexible. I mean, we need to decide what is capacity for a classroom.
For example, the high school was built for 2,000 was the capacity, I believe, but yet you add a few kids here and there, and our capacity can be 2,200 or something like that. I mean, it's kind of it's a moving target of what you decide you want capacity to be. So some of that is difficult. I agree that I'd like to know as close as we can to what that could be. However, I guess I'm basing my feeling of numbers on what we've done in the past, and the numbers are not there yet where they were in the past. So I guess I kind of know where those openings might be based on the information that we have. My other concern is that we could start losing kids, and I don't blame the families at all if their sibling is here and they can't bring the next sibling in at kindergarten, that they're going to move on. So there's that variable that we can't even predict what they'll do. And I wouldn't blame them for moving on. I mean, if I wouldn't want my kids in 2 different districts personally. And I know that they're going to be needing to make some decisions. It's only February, but it is February. So I don't know how long it takes to get what you're asking for. I would like to see us open enrollment in kindergarten, even if it's at a minimum capacity. I think one of the ones that Hazel mentioned was 60 or 65, which doesn't seem like it will have that much impact for our resident students. But it may help us financially as we go forward.
Well, I do think that measuring capacity at the high school and even sometimes at the middle school, because they don't have set classrooms, et cetera, is going to be a lot more difficult. But I am concerned that if we open it up too much in kindergarten, then you've got a trickle-up effect through 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade that we may not be in a position to handle right away, given all the other variables. And I just like to know it. And also, as far as determining capacity, you only have so many sections at each school. So it should be a little bit easier to do it at the lower grades. I'm not saying it's a fun job. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but some idea of what your overall ideal expectations would be. And then keep in mind Hazel's report and say, okay, here's what we think our growth may be. So we can plan ahead and measure that, and we're making some conscious decisions. Say, okay, we're willing to be overcrowded in 1st grade next year if that's what it's needed, and we're willing to do that for so long or something like that. I just want to know before I make a final decision or make a vote.
I appreciate that. We want to know as much as we can before we make a decision. I just feel like those capacities are more or less set from what our practice has been. And that's what I'm basing it on. And those kindergartens moving into 1st grade, those numbers are, we can look historically if we're losing or gaining kids between kindergarten and 1st grade. I don't have the graph in front of me.
Last year we lost, between 1st and 12th grade, we lost 47 students into open enrollment students. That's why we continue to lose them, whether they're moving into the district or they're moving away for some reason, through those grade levels. That's the number. And that's why you see, even if we capped kindergarten at 105, that we would, in 10 years, because of that loss at all other grade levels, we would still be at about the same number of open enrolled kids in the district.
Okay, I want to get consensus on Mayor's request of the administration. Does that sound like something you would like to see before the next board meeting?
I guess I just have a question. It feels like we've done that before with some of the things with Nexus and planning last year.
I think we have.
I feel like we've done this before. I'm not saying not to bring it forward, but I feel like we should have those.
I think the data is there, is it not, Terry? Or easily?
When we were looking at buildings last year.
Maybe Terry can comment.
Well, I think that we need a little bit more direction in terms of exactly what you're looking at, because I would agree that, if you were to come and say, we were going to open this up to 50 more students, our job then would be the management of that and ensuring that we were being responsible in terms of where those students were placed, so that we weren't putting a burden on particular buildings or having inequitable class sizes. To me, that would be the management responsibility that we would have, given the oversight that you would provide. The matrix piece seems a bit more detailed in that, and I do agree that there are a lot of moving parts with that. If that's the direction of the board, then that's certainly what we'll do to the best of our ability. But I think there's a lot of factors that are unknowns, and that's what projections and enrollment data is about. Especially, I think we're in such a unique position right now because, as Julie indicated, we don't know how many other families will choose to leave our district because the siblings can't come in. So that's a whole nother variable in terms of budget. So I think it goes back to that earlier conversation where we take a look and we can solve and build matrix and capacity projections for space, and then there's the budget ramifications of what's actually going to be happening over the next couple of months. So we can certainly do it if that's the direction of the board, though.
Well, Stacy, you said if the numbers are already there somewhere, it shouldn't be too
Well,
much
I mean,
of a
I know
burden.
from capacity of buildings, we've looked
Okay.
at that numerous times with Nexus. And so, I mean, I think that information, you want to speak to that, Matt? Okay.
I think that we've gone through that exercise, but that exercise has been done in the context of what kind of capacity do we want as we're opening a new building, understanding what that would look like. So it hasn't necessarily been done in the context of how do we currently operate and how do we run sections in our building. So we can absolutely do it. It's different from the kind of exercise, though, that we would go through for planning purposes when we're looking at building capacity like that.
Okay.
So it's just a little bit different in terms of how we would assess how many additional sections could go into a building. Another thing that we've typically not done to as granular a level is done that forecasting from kindergarten registration to those October 1 numbers to look at what's our average resident student increase there. So that's something that would be new and a little different. I'm not sure that we have the data right at our fingertips to be able to take open enrolled students out of that, but we can certainly, it's all possible.
Well, the other big variable, though, is back a number of years ago when we were losing enrollment, all those numbers went out the window. I mean, none of them made any sense. And now we're building again. So there are more residents coming in, but there's also, the district is offering a lot more programs that are more desirable to people from outside the district. And to balance those, we need some of those outside people. One other comment, though, with the variables with capacity, at one point we had decided how many kindergarten kids there'd be in a classroom. And I'm not sure if you mean for that to be revisited, because that will make a difference on what a capacity of a school is. I mean, sections are one thing, but if we want to put 20 kindergartners in a classroom or we want to put 23, that has significant impact on what the capacity of a building is. And there are some numbers out there, I think, in one of our policies. I believe that policy still exists, that states some parameters. I don't know if the board's comfortable with those anymore or not. And there was some flexibility in a range, if I remember right. So that to me is a big variable on what that capacity decision would be.
All I'm trying to do is just get a baseline. And I would just say that, if you've got one elementary, or you've got, all the elementary schools here, and let's say your average ideal capacity per grade or per kindergarten would be 25, then you've got a number, and we can see it growing. And we can say, well, based upon Hazel's numbers, we're probably expecting 3 or 4 kids extra in each of these sections or per school. So how much room do we really have? And what happens if we see that same 3 or 4 or maybe 10 grow in a first grade? What are we setting ourselves up for? Because at the same time, we don't want to lose kids. We certainly don't want to make people wait to find out if they have a space. But if they're moving their kids into classrooms that are overcrowded, the kids are getting lost, there's lack of control in the classroom, or God forbid these teachers know. I mean, I don't have to put up with that, and I think they're saints for having to deal with that because I couldn't control that many kids. But I mean, you do run into other issues, and they may pull their kids because they're overcrowded too.
And I'm not suggesting
So-
that we overcrowd our classes at all. That is
Yeah.
not even in my wheelhouse.
And you know, if this has already been done, then the last thing I want to do is add rework. But if it's already been done, it would be just be easy for me, because I'm a numbers person, to look at this and go, okay, you know, I think we're good. I think we can go ahead and open kindergarten, you know, and make that confident vote to say, you know what, if we're wrong by 1% or something like that, I'm willing to live with that. That's fine, or 2%. You can't forecast people moving, especially at that age. You can't forecast that. But it just gives us an idea of how much wiggle room we have.
Could we can use similar staffing assumptions to what we've used in the past in terms of not breaking from kind of our norms for class sizes, and we can bring that back in terms of how many sections do we have capacity for when we take a good shot at looking at resident student growth from now until October.
Could we look at, say, and if we set some numbers, say 30, 60, or 30, 50, 70, and then run the budget from that point? I don't know what number you use, and I don't know, trying to set
Maybe
that.
it'd be good to have a few numbers to look at to
Yeah, I
see
mean,
what our breaking point might be.
So I want to make
I'm
sure
not
that we
sure.
have, first of all, consensus on the request for that Mary's request. Do we have consensus on like a number of sections per school with some theoretical class sizes per section? Is that what you're looking for, Mary?
If it means getting more information before we make the decision, so we can make the best one, I'm supportive of that. But I'd like to make it more timely. I mean, is it something we can have at the work session next time, 2 weeks?
Do we
Is that enough time?
Is that possible?
I think it's there though, isn't it?
Actually, a
We
week
will,
probably,
we
because
will
we need to
put
get
our
the
best
information,
foot
right?
forward to do that.
Okay.
I just think this is timely. We need to move forward. Keep smiling over there.
So what I'm hearing, a couple scenarios. Is
Go
that
ahead, go
accurate?
ahead.
I just want to have clear direction so that we
wanna give you
produce
clear
what it
direction,
is that you want. So am I hearing a couple different scenarios on what it would look like with X number of additional open enrolled students in X number of additional? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think
I'm not asking you to predict X number
I
of
think we have-
anything. I just think.
Just scenarios around.
Well, actually, I sent a spreadsheet out already, just saying, okay, you've got so many kids already enrolled per grade school, how many sections you have, and what is your ideal capacity at those particular elementary schools. And, you know, I'm not asking anybody to try and make predictions, because I'd rather just deal with personally, I would rather deal with raw numbers, and then we can discuss based upon, the board can discuss based upon Hazel's predictions, et cetera, and about the budget too, about what we're willing to go to on those numbers. So we know, so if we say we're going to reopen kindergarten, we can give a limit. You know, we can say we're comfortable with this limit.
That was my
Therefore, it's-
question. That was my question. If you want us to run those scenarios, given we would
Yes,
allow.
I would like
X-
to see some scenarios.
Okay.
And then the scenario should also be that we keep it closed.
We have that
Have that.
scenario.
I mean, that should be part of that presentation.
That's her
Continue-
null hypothesis in
Right,
general,
keep-
right? Okay.
Side-by-side comparisons.
So what I'm hearing from the board is two requests. One for a capacity type analysis, number of sections per school per grade for K through 3. Is that correct?
I
And
think
then the
that's what
other,
I'm saying.
and then the other is the budget analysis for 30, 60.
Well, and I'd recommend, if we try to do it, if we do it with the, I think there was a sibling, 81 or something like that, get close to that number would be good as well.
I do have a question, Julie. Did the sibling, 2017 open enrollment sibling graph, are the 400 that we already see coming in for kindergarten, did that include those open enrolls that were already, okay.
So you get clear direction from us.
Melissa.
And with Julie, you
Right.
have, go ahead.
One extra point, and I appreciate that Leah brought up policy. There is a policy 203 5.1 under how we govern that states that the board shall seek solutions it believes will provide the greatest benefit to the largest number of students.
I get the consensus that we want to increase to our capacity or to what we can handle. I get that sense. I don't know if that's what you folks see or feel.
I mean, I think we have to weigh it with the
We have the
impact on
resources
budget
there.
with what, with what.
I guess I don't want to underutilize our space.
But I think also knowing what our growth pattern is,
Right, yeah.
is the concern.
And you think you'll be able to have that by study session?
Yes.
All right.
As I look at my staff
Julie's
who
not
will be doing
smiling.
the work.
Julie's not smiling.
We recognize, I appreciate the conversation, and we recognize your desire to have the best numbers possible, to make the best decisions possible. I know that I've also gotten questions about the timing, and I think that we've got obviously budget decisions that have to be made, staffing decisions that have to be made, and families that have life decisions that have to be made. So we certainly want to honor that as well.
Ben, anything? I'm going to go around the table here and see if anything else.
I think that accurately addresses my concerns as well. I think as long as we're using the classrooms efficiently, for the numbers that we have prescribed in the size of each section, it's kind of our assumption, to get a decent idea of what it is. Allow that to kind of to bear itself as far as what it looks like from enrollment, both in district and over enrollment.
Melissa, you good with path forward? Stacy? Lee? Good? Okay. You're good with our direction?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to policy next. The first and second reading of policy 202, 203, and 213. Mr. Matt Mons, Executive Director of Human Resources.
We're gonna have a little transition mode.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm intrigued. All right. So first up, we've got the series of hundreds of policies. This is a first and second read, where the only material change to these policies were the changes necessary in order to realize the board's decision that was made in study session to move forward with the new
Why don't we have a motion and do I have a motion to accept the changes?
I move.
A motion by Todd. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Stacy. Do I have any questions? I would just say these are needed to make sure that we're in compliance with Minnesota state statutes with regard to our order.
Thank you, Rich, for finding that.
All right. No more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 7-0. On to second and final reading of policies, the 400 series. Mr. Matt Mons, Executive Director of Human Resources.
Yes, so now this is the second reading of the first half, essentially, of our 400 series of policies that cover employees in the district. Just note that we did go through each of these individually in our last study session and discussed each of the material changes. And so I was not planning to go through that exercise again tonight, but instead simply answer any questions that may be out there. At that time, I was not asked to go back and
Okay, I'll take a motion for the acceptance of the first part of the 400 series policies.
So made.
By Stacy, and a second.
Second.
Second by Mary. Any questions or comments for Matt? Seeing none, all those in favor of the acceptance of those 400 series policies say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 7-0. That moves us on to administrative reports. Dr. Stallo.
Thank you very much. At Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, our mission is to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community. Our collective work is focused on that mission, and tonight I'd like to share 2 updates with you that have been in place as we work toward that mission. First of all, an update on the Facilities Task Force. The Facilities Task Force met last Wednesday and spent time reviewing the 10-year enrollment projections and draft options that have been formed based on its input. The 50-member group broke into small groups to provide feedback, including the strengths, concerns, and ideas for each of the options presented. The next step is to present options to the community at the public input session on March 2nd and the board listening session on March 9th, both at 6:30 at the DSC. Our final task force meeting is March 20th. At that time, we will focus on reviewing feedback from the public and provide consultation to the design team for option revisions prior to another round of public input on March 28th. We will then further refine the options and then present the options to the board for consideration of action this spring. I've stated this before, but I think it bears mentioning again that our task force is a diverse group with a wide variety of backgrounds. Business owners, stay-at-home parents, engineers, realtors, bank managers, manufacturing and IT professionals, contractors, and many other expertise. This group is also made up of staff, students, empty nesters, retirees, and includes residents who have a wide variety of thoughts, ideas, and opinions surrounding our school and facility needs. We formed a task force because community engagement is important to us, and we are committed to a public engagement process that is inclusive of multiple perspectives. This is an important part of our strategic plan. Our 6th strategic direction is to engage parents, families, and community to strengthen a culture of inclusion and respect. I believe this process has been thorough, inclusive, and respectful. Last December, at the end of our task force meeting, the group provided the following shared messages. These are the words of the group and not my words. We want great schools for our kids. We want different opinions. We want sustainability, communication, and transparency. We have different wants. We want our staff and community to understand our demographic changes. This process is representative of different voices, perspectives, and is representative of our community. As we move forward in the process, we will continue to seek input and are committed to bringing forward options to you this spring that are inclusive of our community's input. I encourage the public to attend one of our upcoming input sessions to share thoughts and opinions as we work to find a long-term facility solution for our growing school district. I'd also like to report a little bit on our World Cafe event that was held last week as well. Our World Cafe event was a great success. We had about 130 to 140 people attend from our district, Shakopee and Eden Prairie. Todd and Rich were also in attendance as representative board members. We were one of the first districts in the metro to host the World Cafe. There had been one the night prior with St. Paul, Roseville, and New Brighton schools. The Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, along with 40 other school districts, have come together to develop a collective education plan to address integration, access, opportunity, and educational achievement. Input from our event has been collected and will help inform school districts on a plan that creates equity and excellence in education for all Minnesota schools. These findings will be shared with the public once all events have taken place, and I will be happy to share them with you as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any administrative reports tonight? Okay. Board reports, I'll start out. I had a chance to go to the MSBA Leadership Conference in January. I had a nice roundtable discussion with other board chairs from around the state. We met with other boards or other board members from District MSBA District 13 for a nice discussion. I attended one session on how to pass a referendum put on by the Rice Sauk Rapids area community. One of the ideas they had is they really involved the whole community, even the businesses. So their businesses, they formed a partnership and they would put a sticker on the business's sign or door that says, "We are partners with the school district," and that got everyone involved, and it was a really local feel to that. And then I attended a session on construction contracts and insurance basics. So it was, any other board reports?
I just make one comment.
Go ahead, Stacey.
And I think somebody alluded to it, or I think Terry did, that it's C Day coming up February 22nd. And I think Melissa and I are scheduled to go with Terry and a couple other administrators. But they did bring up a point that if there's constituents that want to come, and I think this C specifically addresses our low property wealth district that we are, and a reason why we get such low funding as compared to other districts. That is a big reason why we're a part of that group and the districts that belong. And so it's been a really important group for us to continue and to get in our legislature's ear. So I would just put a call out to anyone to send an email to me or Melissa and just say you'd like to come along because they really want to hear from, us, of course, they hear from us, but actual constituents. And so anyone's welcome. We'll get you the information and you come along with us for the day. It's from I think 9 to 3. So down at the state capitol. Okay.
Early.
I do. I had the opportunity to have my first community advisory meeting last week. And it was fun to be back there and see some really old faces fun faces that have been there for a really long time. Put it that way. I don't want to call them old. I'll be in trouble. But there's some very dedicated people in that group, and they're very, very active. We have a very active community ed program. And it was fun to see the partnerships that they're continuing to keep developing and the idea sharing with the Y and with Shepherd's Path, as well as the cities of Savage and Prior Lake and their park and rec. So it was just really exciting to see that we are collaborating. We're not trying to duplicate things, trying to make it more streamlined for parents so they know where to register their kids for what. So it was a really good meeting. It was really fun, and they're really busy. So it's fun.
Any other board reports? Go ahead, Henry.
Good evening, everyone. I also had the chance to attend the MSBA Leadership Conference last month. I was part of the serving as a student school board member forum, me and I think 6 other board members sat up front and answered questions to school board members that were looking towards possibly adding a student representative or asking how their student representatives use their voices or get involved in their schools. 2 ideas I took away from it. I took away many, but one board member, she goes to their middle school and talks to their middle school student council for things that they would like to be brought up at the school board meetings or recognition that they think middle schoolers deserve. So possibly reaching out to both Hidden Oaks and Twin Oaks student councils and letting them have some input on school board and that. And then also other members expanded their means for getting student input from their student bodies, so providing a direct link to provide questions or comments or concerns that go directly to their student representative, which then that representative can bring to their principals, administration, or the school board. It's been a very busy month at the high school for students and staff. 2 highlights of the past month have been our Laker Time, which we're going to have our 3rd Laker Time this week. And I'll just explain it quickly for those who may not remember. Laker Time is the new schedule on Wednesdays at the high school. We get an hour allotted in the morning to work on projects, make up tests, work on schoolwork. And just in these first 2 weeks, I've seen that it's been a success and many students are really taking advantage of those opportunities. It's hard for a lot of athletes or involved students to make up things that they miss in class, and that hour has already helped a lot of students. Also, we opened a new lunch line to help accommodate for the growth we're seeing. It's called The Bowl. It's at the front of the school to alleviate the back of the lunchroom as people are trying to crowd into the small corner. And the reviews are in and everyone's loving The Bowl. It's kind of our own Chipotle in the high school. And it has noticeably, students both like it and it's decreasing room in the lunchroom. So great for everyone there. We've had some great success with our activities at the high school. Just this week, the jazz dance team got 2nd place finish at section, so they're going on to state. We're all very excited for them. Our mock trial team is having their best season in years. They've now moved up 5 rounds, and actually 2 of their teams now have to face against each other because they've gotten so far in the tournament. And the winner of that match is going to the state tournament. So the 2 Prior Lake teams facing each other. Our speech team is also having great success. We've gotten first at 2 of our speech meets, second, and then 4th place finishes so far this season. And we had our largest meet at the high school just 2 weeks ago. Anyway, we had 700 competitors there, and it was a great experience, and everyone loved coming to Prior Lake High School for it. And then last week, we had our 2nd annual Sweethearts Week at the high school. So our winter semi-formal dance and Spirit Week. Everyone had a great time. We had some great Spirit Days. Wednesday, we had our largest dodgeball tournament at Prior Lake High School history. We had 30 teams, took 3 hours, and then the winner, or the championship games, were played at our Pep Fest on Friday. Great experience for everyone. In the underclassmen championship, they ran onto the gym floor as the game was won and crowded the team. So great experience. And then the dance was on Saturday night, capped off a great week. We had 700 students attend. The 8 to 11 semi-formal dance. We had a popular radio DJ from the new radio station 95.3 come, so it was very fun. And now students are looking forward to our next fun week, spring break, and prom. So, and obviously enjoying school as we always do.
Nice recovery.
Yeah.
Mary or Todd, any board reports? No? Okay. On to future events, no school, February 20th, and on our President's Day, the secondary parent-teacher conferences will be held February 23rd. We'll have a school board meeting with our local legislators on the 27th right here in the DSC at 5 p.m. Then we'll follow that up with a school board study session at 6 p.m. And the Facilities Task Force public input sessions are scheduled for the March 2nd, 28th, as you know. And then we also have a school board listening session from the facilities scheduled for March 9th at 6:30 here at the DSC. And one other item I'll add, we'll have a facilities committee meeting 4:30 on Wednesday of this week right here. So, go ahead.
Just one comment that I wanted to say. Because I wasn't aware that I would really be on the board when I made my travel plans, I will not be at the meeting or the listening sessions on March 2nd or March 9th. I will follow up and find out how they all went, but I just want to make it public that that's the reason I'm not here. Thank you.
Any other issues? Then I will ask for a motion for adjournment. By Ben, seconded by Stacy. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The meeting is adjourned.